did you know that there's this weed that doesn't get you high but has all the medical benefits? I was like, yes, Grandma, I've been telling you this for years. But sometimes, you need a Joe Rogan or a Gwyneth Paltrow or Oprah to tell you the same information that the black sheep grandson has been
Right.
espousing for years.
Right. To give it that much more credibility, that comes with famous voices. Are there famous voices out there that are big proponents of either your product or mushroom products that kind of advocate? Martians landed,
Yes.
wearing Prada suits,
Yes.
drinking Henry Seltzer,
Yes.
chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and
Your branding here,
yes, brand.
your message here,
Yes, and
a verse about
yes,
your product here.
yes,
I'm Hirsch Redfin.
yes, and
I'm a message therapist.
yes,
And I have a podcast.
yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes,
We'll help you fix the world
yes.
or your bottom line.
All right,
Your bottom line.
get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
Hitting the brand voice runway today with me is Robert Johnson. Robert is the founder and CEO of premium mushroom product company Mycroboost and the supplements manufacturer Custom Capsule Consultants. We were just talking about the fact that Robert was originally moved to LA to pursue a career in comedy, and we have that in common. That he started out as a comedy writer and comedian and then moved into cannabis sales and marketing, which is some people that would be like a euphemism, but in this case it really is a part of Robert's career. And we will talk about comedy and mushrooms and the industry, and of course the brand voice. Oh, that sounds like that sounded like I did that. I never forget to turn my phone off. But the funny thing is, I like that little chime. It sounded like we were starting the school day. And welcome to first period. Okay. Well, anyway, without further ado, Robert Johnson, welcome to Brand Voice Runway.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. And talking about comedy and mushrooms are two of my favorite things. So I'm excited for the conversation.
I can imagine whatever gets us through the day. So take us back a little bit, because I want the audience to have a sense of your professional background and how we got to what you're doing with Mycroboost today.
Yeah, so 15 years ago, I graduated college. I got a degree in creative writing, and a buddy of mine, another writer, moved to LA together. And every day we're working on ghostwriting or punching up different manuscripts to add more humor to it. And then at the end of the day, we would talk about how it would just be hilarious to start a cannabis company called I Can't Believe It's Pot Butter, And so after like 2 or 3 weeks of just kind of having this pipe dream, if you will, about this brand, eventually we're just like, we should just try it. And we started this company. This was in 2008, though. We actually moved to LA the day Barack Obama was elected. And so after 8 years of the G.W. Bush administration, people were pretty reluctant to work with new people that just walk in off the street. It was a completely different world than we have today with legal cannabis in California. And so people would say to me, "Hey, we don't buy from people we don't know." And so my strategy was to, literally butter them up with brownies and Rice Krispie treats and caramel corn. And I'd go into the dispensary, give them all this free goodies, and then I'd work on my material. I'd have like 5 to 10 minutes. So I just tell them jokes while they're eating, delicious sugary snacks. And after, a month or so, I was like, okay, are we friends yet? Can we work together?
Right.
And so that just one by one was how we've started our first brand and getting them into the California dispensary market. So in 2010, we started a trade association for edibles manufacturers, right? So back then if you would go into a dispensary, the unit of measurement or how strong your edible was like completely arbitrary units of measurement, right? You would see a brownie and you're wondering, well, how am I going to feel when I try this? And it would say, like, how strong is this? It's 10 skull and crossbones. That's how strong it is.
Right.
Or
right.
it's 10x or extra strength. And you had no idea really what you were going to get. And so as a product manufacturer, the way that people would judge whether or not they should work with us was they'd be like, hey, all right, you see that guy over in the corner there? He's 350 pounds. He has such a huge tolerance. We're going to give him your brownie. If he feels high, we'll buy from you, which, on any given day could be completely hit or miss. Sometimes the guys are smoking a joint and looking at me like, I don't think this brownie's working. I'm just like, how can you tell?
Right. Some of those guys only work 2 hours a day because, they test a couple of products and that's it.
Yeah, they're done. Yeah. So we wanted something that would be, more objective. And my whole career has been about legitimizing plant-based medicine by making it like medicine and making it repeatable, predictable, consistent, because everybody has an edibles experience that scared them away from edibles at one point, right? I tried a little bit. I don't think it's really working. I'm going to try some more. And then it's way too much, and you can't start over, you just have to suffer through it. And so, I didn't want that for myself or for any of our customers. Plus, California they first put legalization on the ballot in 2010. And this was a midterm election. It ended up losing. But one of the things that was on the chopping block was edibles. And they said, we don't really know how to regulate edibles because it's not food and it's not cannabis. There was no middle ground for it. So we wanted to create a system and, give to the bureaucrats creating the laws in California and say, this is how we think you should regulate and test edibles. And so we started this trade association and got all of the biggest edibles manufacturers in the state to agree, we're going to test every batch of our edibles and we're going to put on the label the milligrams of actual THC. So that's why today you go into a dispensary and get a 10 milligram gummy. It's pretty predictable. Maybe the onset time could vary depending on how it was made, but you're not going to have an experience that's 10 times what you were expecting.
Right. So you were the progenitors behind the milligram measurement?
Yeah, I've heard about other groups in other states kind of all having the similar ideas around the same time. But as far as California was concerned, we were the first ones. And, we were only like 23, 24 years old at the time. And our competitors had kind of been around for a while longer. So we invited them all into this room and they were all kind of shocked and surprised to see that these young guys had been, pushing them off the shelves at some cases. And back then it wasn't like, really tie your face to a brand. It was still kind of a gray area. So when we all kind of surfaced, it was surprising for them to see that, these young kids were the ones that were pushing for this, but they all really got on board and they had the same issues that we did too. They wanted their patients at the time or their customers to, really be confident in what they were going to get. And, you want to turn your aunt with cancer on to something alternative that's going to help her out. You don't want to give her an experience that's going to scare her away from something that could really be beneficial. Yeah.
And I've talked to a number of people in the cannabis industry. You're going to be my first mushroom guest, and I'll tell you my mushroom story. But when it comes to marketing and it comes to the laws, the regulations, that's an ever evolving kind of space, whatever we want to say. It's an ever evolving issue. So where do things stand right now as far as, just to kind of lay the foundation for our conversation, the FDA, the rulings, the limitations for marketing cannabis infused, or THC infused products?
Well, I sold out of my last cannabis business in 2018, right, as recreational took over California. So I know that there is a little more leniency towards cannabis. But in 2020, we started Custom Capsule Consultants marketing CBD and hemp. And even CBD has limitations on what can be advertised. The FDA has approved CBD for topical use, and one oral company, Epidiolex, which is a pharmaceutical grade CBD that's good for kids with epilepsy and seizures and Tourette's. So there's in any emerging industry, education is a really crucial part of getting people to change their minds about something that has been marketed to them or given them some propaganda their whole lifetime. In addition to getting that message out is also disseminating it. And essentially what happens, even people that we hire as experts, there's a lot of trial and error in figuring out what is going to fly, and sometimes it really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Okay. And so you were kind of in the thick of all of that stuff. And now, how long have you been interested, honestly, in cannabis, psychedelics, what running in the run up to the mushroom part of your career, let's say, how would you describe in a nutshell the work experience that you gave me, but going back a little further, your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, I went to high school in Houston, Texas, and I think I was 15 or 16 years old, and my friends all took me out to a cow field after it rained one morning, and we were foraging for psychedelic mushrooms in this cow field in Texas. And we ended up getting like contractor bags, like 55-gallon bags full of these mushrooms. And that was my first psychedelic mushroom experience. I remember they weren't dry or processed like you can buy now, but just wet right out of that. We washed the dirt and the dung off of it, and ate a bunch of them, and went out on the golf course. And it was a transformative experience. I was really interested in the writings of the beatniks, Jack Kerouac and Burroughs and Ginsberg, and they talked a lot about experimentation with cannabis and psychedelics. And it was really the zest for life and like the revolutionary sort of feeling behind their writing that got me interested in it. I wanted to connect more with the people around me. And I grew up Catholic, as did Kerouac, and his interest in Eastern religion and philosophy really touched a chord with me. And then when I read more books talking about his experiences with psychedelics and cannabis, that really piqued my interest. And as a writer, I was looking for anything that would help me, develop my voice and have a unique perspective.
Yeah, I found Kerouac's stuff to be so evocative, and reading it before having done anything, and then reading it after having had experiences was very different. But at the same time, if I read Big Sur or what, and I feel like, oh my God, that's the most incredibly, relatable, descriptive, material that I could imagine. But you see it from a different perspective. For people who haven't experienced anything, they get a real sense of what a lot of this stuff is really like. And then if they have experienced it, they're like, oh my God, that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, so I think Big Sur is kind of analogous to the legalization of these cannabinoids, right? Like Big Sur is my favorite novel of Kerouac's, and kind of reflecting on this entire hippie movement that he was largely the founder of, and drunk, kind of angry old man towards the end of his life. He wasn't thrilled with the way that his ideas had transformed into this counterculture. And I think that kind of interesting too, myself included, who was an advocate and an activist for cannabis legalization, just really couldn't foresee, how that change would really play out.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it makes the product more of a commodity, and the real profitability from it was in its illicitness for years. And now, it becomes, just another opportunity for, hedge funds and big money to really, capitalize and try and monopolize the entire industry. So in retrospect, I think, myself and a lot of cannabis activists might have done things differently.
Yeah. And fortunately, there are organizations like, Last Prisoner Project, that continue to advocate for freeing people who are still incarcerated for nonviolent crimes, for, cannabis related crimes. And, so that the progress or the evolution doesn't become purely an economical one, or, or a business one. But jutting back to business for a second, tell me a little bit about the Mycroboost founding and the mushroom business.
Yeah. So when we started Custom Capsule Consultants, it was primarily to work with hemp and CBD. And, my experience in cannabis, we made THC soft gels and vaporizers and some breath sprays, just really pharmaceutical grade form factors. We always thought, people don't take a Valium lollipop, they take a medicine, right? And so when we founded the hemp company, soft gels was a main product that we're making. But when we're marketing our services and our expertise, inevitably we started making all sorts of different supplements. And it was right as COVID started too, right? In March of 2020. So supplements had a real boom, and I learned so much about them. I had lots of experience in cannabis, but I just really didn't know the supplement world outside of that. And what I came across was a lot of people contacting me wanting to put in whatever trendy supplements or ingredients of the day, ashwagandha or elderberry or lion's mane mushrooms became one that more and more people were requesting. And so, we want to make, whether it's for our brands or for our white label or private label customers, we want to make the best possible product, right? It takes a lot of effort and money to acquire new customers, to build their trust. And, when they finally, spend the money to take the product, you want them to notice that it's really beneficial to them. And so, there's limitations with some ingredients in soft gels. It's a pretty small form factor. So when I would explain to brands, we can put ashwagandha, elderberry, these things in there, but, to really have a significant or therapeutic amount of, you might need, 6-7 pills. And that's, maybe going to be a little cumbersome on the customer. And I was surprised at how many supplement companies were like, we really don't care about having it be a therapeutic dose as much as just being able to market, all these key words that are in our product.
Yeah.
And I just didn't, and I would argue with them. I'd say, but you want the customer to be a customer for life, right? That's the goal. And so, if the idea of just kind of tricking them into buying the product one time didn't really make sense to me. But I wanted to find a way to make, these products into soft gels and the small form factors that we make. So I just started doing a ton of research on functional mushrooms, which I found to be the most rich of all of the products we were working with. And we found these dual extracted extracts from this company out of Canada. So we can put the equivalent of 1,500 milligrams of mushrooms into a single soft gel because of the potency or the concentration of these extracts. And so once I found that, that's when I finally was confident to make a brand of my own, because I just didn't want to do something that was not going to be effective, or give people something that was, just a placebo, essentially. And so, that's when we first developed the soft gels and gummies. And about 6 months later, we came out with this coffee, which has 3,000 milligrams of functional mushrooms per serving. And, in addition to researching I write for Rolling Stone about mushrooms. So I've interviewed a ton of people about, much smarter than me with many, many more decades of experience, and just trying to learn as much as I can about it. In the meantime, I'm taking the product, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm working, 10, 12, 14-hour days some days. And, I need a lot of energy. I need focus. I need concentration. And I noticed that the lion's mane and cordyceps in particular are my two favorite mushrooms for entrepreneurs. And even my white label customers that were buying hemp or whatever they're buying, I would send them our brain supplement, which is a combination of lion's mane and cordyceps, whether it was just a free gift with their order or Christmas.
What's the brain supplement called, Robert?
It's called Brain.
Brain.
We have three different soft gel formulas: Brain, Immunity, and Wellness.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, these guys are my friends. I really am inspired by entrepreneurs, and they started taking the stuff too. And we're all just remarking on how we had more sustained energy and, just coming up with seemingly better ideas. And so, yeah, psychedelics, I think similar to how CBD became really known in the mainstream, was around the time of cannabis legalization in Colorado, California, and, the 30 some odd states that have followed suit since then. My grandma actually called me after she saw Sanjay Gupta on CNN in like 2014. And she says, hey, Bob, did you know that there's this weed that doesn't get you high, but has all the medical benefits? I was like, yes, Grandma, I've been telling you this for years. But sometimes, you need a Joe Rogan or a Gwyneth Paltrow or Oprah to tell you the same information that the black sheep grandson has been espousing for years.
Right. To give it that much more credibility, that comes with famous voices. Are there famous voices out there that are big proponents of either your product or mushroom products that kind of advocate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've done articles just about just talking about all the celebrities that talk about their mushroom experiences. I think the two most influential people in the past few years have been Michael Pollan, who wrote the book How to Change Your Mind. He's a best-selling author, the author of The Omnivore's Dilemma. And so he's a baby boomer in his 60s who wrote this book about psychedelics, coming to it from the perspective that it was hippie nonsense, basically.
Yeah.
And over the course of this book, he tries basically every psychedelic available and really has a transformative experience on his entire perspective about it. And I think, that neutral source, or even, somebody coming from it as a skeptic and then, being a voice for the baby boomer generation was hugely influential. I know he's, a headliner at some of the conferences I speak at. And then also Paul Stamets is probably the most well-known mycologist in North America. And he had a documentary called Fantastic Fungi, and it came out on Netflix, I think in 2021. And it's such a great film. I mean, when I saw it, I thought like anyone who sees this is going to want to add mushrooms into their diet, both functional and possibly psychedelic as well. So I think, those two main pieces of media, similar to, the beatniks and Ken Kesey in the 60s, that attention that they garnished for these substances has been, probably more powerful than anything.
Yeah. And so we don't forget to touch on this. Tell me a little bit before we go about your comedy background and what happened when you got to LA and started getting involved in comedy writing. Around what time was that?
Yeah, I graduated college in 2008. So I moved to LA, during the economic crisis,
right,
graduated from college, with the liberal arts degree in the economic crisis. And then it was also the writer's strike. We just had a writer's strike end a couple of months ago, but 2008 was the one when streaming was first on the scene. and there were labor negotiations about that. So my friend and I were not in the union yet, so we did all sorts of random stuff. We did some stuff for the Disney Channel where it was kind of like a VH1 pop-up video where we're making jokes, kind of making fun of the show as the show was playing.
Yeah.
My partner punched up a couple of like skinny bitch books for jokes. And actually I ended up ghostwriting a book that had some comedy in it because it was me writing it, but it was about redwood trees. And it was a doctor friend of my family who has been working on this novel that was like a metaphor for the family and for redwood forest and how they have an interconnected root system. And so I was writing, kind of like punching that up or rewriting it, restructuring it as more of a spiritual thriller. So every chapter was, learning a new lesson for the protagonist and kind of tying all these metaphors together between, trees and interconnected root system. And it really comes back to mushrooms. Mycelium is the root system of mushrooms, and it's the largest living organism and the oldest living organism on the planet. Some mycelial networks go on for 2-3 square miles. And so I found that, kind of really coming full circle as I was, doing all the research on mushrooms and how they can send information and scientists in The Guardian even talked about how they can identify words, as much as 50 words that mushrooms can share with each other across networks. They can share nutrients as needed in different parts of the ecosystem and forest. And so that research I did, 15 years ago on the redwood trees all was really coming back to me. But
yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did some stand up, but most of it was in front of the dispensary guys, because the open mic stand ups didn't pay. But if you get the Raftas laughing about your cannabis bit, they could order, a couple grand worth of edibles from me. And so that quickly became, the fast gratification that I was looking for. That is, so elusive, I think, to many comedians.
Well, that's the thing is that, what we realize is that when we're taking other jobs to do jobs, or like I stumbled into advertising as a career, it's like you realize that a lot of what you're doing is you're out at dinners, you're out with clients, and you're just kind of being funny. You're performing, and at the time that I was doing it, I felt like it was a substitute for being on stage because I missed being on stage. But then, as I kind of merged the two, and then I spent several years back on stage, and I was like, yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. If you're in a bar, you're regaling people, you're performing. You're performing just like you were performing in front of the the cannabis client. It's really not that different, except that it's not framed as a performance, as a stage, but it can have a very similar feeling.
Yeah, now I get that opportunity speaking at conferences now about supplements, particularly mushrooms. And I feel like I was a pretty average to below average comedian, but as far as like all the scientists and doctors that are at these mushroom events, I think I just, crack everybody.
Yeah. You shine, Robert. Do you prefer Robert or Bob, since your grandma called you Bob?
Oh yeah. My grandma and my friends all call me Bob. But Robert's a good way to know, like, if someone calls me, maybe they're collecting a bill or right. So I it's kind of my cue.
You get it. So I'll call you Bob, because if I call you, it's not like, oh, this guy is collecting money. This guy wants me to pay my bill. It's more like, oh no, that's Hirsch. He has a great podcast. So the last thing I actually wanted to touch on is circling around to marketing the mushroom products, So first of all, as a writer, you have a certain natural skill set when it comes to to creatively selling, right? Like we touched on. But I found in my life anyway, as much as it's a skill you hone like anything else, writing is writing, communicating is communicating. In terms of marketing the company and the products, how do you go about it now at this point?
Because of my background and, being a traditional salesperson, I never became proficient at online marketing. And I think I've really, gone through a lot of trials and tribulations trying to understand it or imitate what other people are doing that is successful. And I've just come back to the conclusion that authenticity is key. And that anything that I'm going to do to try and imitate somebody else or speak in somebody else's voice just really doesn't work for me. And so that's what I just try and do, is just be as authentic as possible, talk about the things that really interest and inspire me and what got me into mushrooms, and try and share that with as many people as I can. And writing for Rolling Stone has been great outlet, and an opportunity to build my voice as an authority in the space, and giving me more speaking opportunities. And so, yeah, with digital marketing now, I'm trying more to just, speak from the heart and not have it be, just some way to try and, trick people into giving me their dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's where my mantra has been: sell the truth, sell the truth. Because ultimately, number one, it's what you want, right? It's what you want to say. You see a lot of brands that are trying to contort themselves for what they believe are quote unquote best practices, or what they think is going to sell and convert. And what they're really doing is they're just sounding like everybody else who's trying to sell it, and that's something that I advocate against. Find that spark that's just you and share that. And there are people who can help you shape a message, shape advertising, but that should all be shaped around that heart that you are talking about, and that core belief. That's all. That stuff should be in the service of that. It shouldn't take away from it, and and try to be anything that you're not. So you're doing the right thing in my humble opinion. And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are just starting out with a possibly breaking new ground? It can be in any industry, but someone who's kind of breaking new ground, and it's a little bit tricky to find the route that you're looking for to get where you want to go.
One of the gifts and curses of entrepreneurs is they're very innovative. They can, be ahead of the curve on popular things. But one thing that I'm guilty of, and I know a lot of my clients too, is we just chase too many shiny objects, right? So my advice would be, if you have a brand, you have a product, start simple. You don't need 25 products. You don't need to have, 15 different platforms. My advice would be to, make maybe 3 amazing products, and really focus your marketing channel and effort into, just building on the momentum of that. As a product manufacturer, I can tell you, if you have 100 products and they're not selling, it's not product 101 that is going to be the magic key. You need to do something different with your focus and marketing.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on.